interesting personal point that I'll put out. The reason why I think I wasn't as successful with Gamma as I could have been was because I was not as much as a bullshit artist as somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried or CZ from Binance. No, really. Like I had access to all the same people that these guys had. I had meetings with all of their same investors. And I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't sit in the room and say, look, our token's going to go to the moon and you're going to be worth billions of dollars and you can pump and dump.
Yeah.
So that was a fake smile. Welcome to the messy middle. Frank, do I need to do the intro like I did last week for people who have missed?
What is messy middle? Tell me, Gabriel.
The messy middle is exactly what I'm going through right now, but through all of us. But the messy middle is the podcast, or at least our experience of going through the entrepreneurial adventure and when you're in the in-between phase. And we take it from the point of view of founders that have had successful exits before, but still need to keep going. This week, I think we're talking about, what are we talking about this week, guys?
Can we define the messy middle as part of the repeat founder cycle? I don't know if you guys saw the meme. I was trying to tag Frank, but it's impossible. You don't want people to tag you on Instagram. But it basically says every founder goes through this cycle. You go through, I'm going to read those things and the guys will put it here on the screen. It's freedom, travel, buying toys, invest in startups, dabble in hobbies, focus on health and longevity, get bored, identity crisis, depression, therapy, donate money to nonprofit. And then at some point there's thinking about starting a podcast. So I think that's the messy middle for us. We're at that stage where we started the podcast already. And coming up next, we're going to be looking at real estate. I think Frank is already looking at buying homes in Japan. Then we'll be trying to build a boring business, build a service agency, starting a venture studio, looking into being a VC, and eventually start another company. So
there you go.
That's the messy middle.
Well, I mean, to sum it up, if you guys are joining this podcast and you're just sold your company or you're about to sell your company, then welcome. As for what you said, Teddy, I agree. There's a cycle, but the truth and what we see is that everybody's cycle is very different. After that, it's nice to make meme and it's nice to it used to be the old meme was, you make a blog or you become influencer or whatever. But we're here to share our own journey. All of us have already a default version of it, I guess. And then we'll keep interviewing people and everybody will share what they do. And today we're going to be talking about... Teddy?
I think we should talk about how much time and money you should spend on testing specific ideas. How long should you stay in that exploratory phase? Let's say you commit to something whether alone or with a partner and you want to explore some ideas. What does that mean? How long? What's the commitment? When is the time to say no? And then also I would like to hear your thoughts, guys, on like some of the red flags. And we talked about in co-founder dating sort of phase, but like when you start working on something, it works, but then there are these red flags. How do you spot them?
Yeah, so I think I take the approach. I've always raised money for the things that I work on, and time is more important than the money side. And I think we have a little technical difficulties with Frank and his microphone, so that'll be the next thing. He'll be fixing the electronics. We got to put that on the messy middle because some people like to garden, and Frank likes to fix electronics and play with robots.
Woodwork.
It would work. So I think in terms of time versus money, I think money is what I'm burning already for my monthly expenses and doing the things that I love. I'm pretty scrappy. So when I commit to something and want to work on it, I give myself, I would say, a couple of months to start working on it. I'll say, okay, I'll make X amount of dollars, or I'll spend X amount of dollars. I'm not going to make any money. Unless I have some consulting role. But once I commit, it's usually, okay, let me go find, and I don't usually commit until I have another person working with me on it. There's only been one thing in my past that is probably Tectalia, and then there was a company I did actually right before I met Frank, Curator, that I committed and I put way too much money into. So my rule was never put money in until I've got another partner to commit with it. And then I aggressively go and raise money. I don't like to raise money and be like, oh, well, we've got a cash flow business. I'm absolutely like the Silicon Valley episode where Russ Hanneman says, revenue? What? Stop. We don't want revenue. That's horrible. We need to be just going after growth. It's probably changed a little bit these days, but I feel like if you're in like, the world of being able to raise money and actually can raise money, go raise like my view is start it. If you're actually falling, for it and you like the partner, go raise, $500,000 to $3 million at a decent valuation. It'll get you set up for 18 to 24 months.
So find at least one person to commit with and then try to raise money.
Find one person that actually can do the work. So although with Gamma, my co-founder, Sam, he was really good because I guess, those, it's nice to have somebody who can microdose sometimes, but he was good at coming up with the ideas and he was the product co-founder. And we actually raised all the money without having a technical co-founder. In fact, we had like 3 different CTOs on our deck based on the week that we were sending out to the investors. So I would say you should commit. Yeah, you need somebody and you need a story of how you're actually going to build the product if you're not a technical founder.
So before going to Frank, curious, how do you, where do you find like the confidence? Like you want to build something technical. You said you built something without technical co-founder, but when you meet this person that you want to work with, you go and raise money. You have to promise things. You have to project this vision and tell people how awesome your thing will be. But how do you know if it's going to work or not from the technical side? You don't have the technical co-founder, for example.
Most of the time, in my view, is you're asking, how do I know if it's going to work or not? None of the ideas that we came out with were that great. I mean, distributed compute, basically, we were utilizing SETI at home type technology. So it's not incredibly advanced tech. And then when I did the payments business, we also did, yeah, I know it is kind of advanced, Frank, but it's also not I don't know. We just felt like it was possible. I was selling a dream and that it could work. And that's, we did have conversation. I mean, like when Gamma was starting, the idea came from the guy who ended up becoming our technical co-founder, Z. But I don't know. I don't want to say I bullshitted it or faked till I make it, but I had because I didn't know how hard it could potentially be. I also, I underestimated how hard it could be, but that gave me the naive, I was naive enough to be like, let's go pitch it. Screw it. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I'm totally like the opposite of what you are doing. I would love to build this thing first and make sure, although I'm a technical person, I would be like, let me see if this actually works, if I can pull this off before I can go and tell other people. Otherwise, I feel like I'm bullshitting. It's I don't know. I'm like that.
I mean, you're bullshitting anyways. Come on, you're bullshitting. Yeah, you're bullshitting anyways, Teddy, because you can build the tech, but you can't guarantee it's going to be a good business. I don't know, Frank. Come on, come in.
True.
We want to hear your.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Sorry, I got hopefully the sound works. I don't know. I mean, if I think about the last one I did, for example, Electis, I spent a lot of time studying the technology, which kind of reactivate my engineering background. And when I chose the architecture, I tried to install it myself, did something rough. And then we recruited a tech team. So I'm not good enough to execute fast on something, but I think I'm good enough to pick up an architecture that makes sense. And to me, it's important to have the right architecture technically. The same with AI. There's 1 million ways you can do AI things. So right now, Teddy knows that, but I'm working on architecture. The way I do it is I read research papers. I study them, I look at it, and when I'm convinced the architecture is good enough, then I go into bullshit mode where it's like, I know roughly the architecture. I have no idea how to execute on it precisely, but I know no one else does because that's startups, and so usually you're always edgy. But you want your business strategy to align with the technical platform, and then you kind of build around that. So that's one approach. When it's non-technical stuff, on the non-technical side of things, I guess I look for people who complement my weaknesses. So, for example, in the US, I always look for an American co-founder. I'm American too, that's true, but I think the accent, the couple of milliseconds or even seconds you take, the wording, everything makes it like a flow of communication that can cost millions of dollars when you fundraise, when you do all these things. So I like, in France, I don't have this issue. But in the US, for example, I would look for someone who's good at helping me with the fundraising side. I'm good at fundraising on the deck side, on the strategy and the general pitch. But I think at the end of the day, fundraising is also, the right handshake, the common background, all the little chat. It's very human. And I'm awkward the first time I meet people. I know that. So again, I'm trying to complement, that. After that, in terms of cost and investing, yeah, I mean, the maximum I would put myself is maybe 10 to 15K into a project, because I keep in mind this number that came from Amar Bide, who made a book about the history of ventures in the United States. And he showed that the high growth company in average in the US didn't put more than 15K, like what's the famous, you max out your credit card kind of thing. Yep. And then I remember I did the math and I compensated for inflation. And I looked at people like Rockefeller, and he also put 15K. So that's kind of my magic number. I'm like, you have to commit no more than 15K. I've got plenty of friends, a couple of friends who really love their ideas. They made a big exit. And so they're like, that's not an issue. I'm going to pay for everything. So they kind of have this illusion of traction because they have people around them who come because they're getting paid. And all of them have the same lesson, which is they would not do that again. It's easy to fool yourself. And I think like when you raise money, it's also because it's a tool, but it's also a validation of the market. People will not invest, if it doesn't make sense, and it's also good feedback. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah, and I agree with Frank on that point. That's if I can think of the successes and the failures that I've had, the one that failed the worst was the one that I put I think almost $180,000 in, and I had a successful exit before that. Right, I made almost $1 million on my exit from BIM, and I put in so much time and so much money, and we had no traction. Other than the fact that I paid my CTO a nice loan, and we had a tech team in Ukraine, and the thing just didn't work. Where I look at Gamma, I think we spent sub $10,000, Frank, because that was a flight. Yeah. It was like a flight. I think the flights were free to Iceland. We paid money for the Airbnb in Iceland. I covered a couple of dinners for my friends, a couple of taxis, and maybe I paid for the incorporation, which was like $500. So I think we spent less than $5,000, and we had investor market fit.
Yeah, I wanted maybe to complement that, because when I talk about how much it costs, if I look at Electis, for example, been working 4 years on it, spent a lot of time, didn't spend much money on it because we got grants, and the same I must have spent maybe 10, 15K of my own money. But we don't pay ourselves a lot. So you can still calculate that in a way you invest a lot with your time, because you're going to be scrappy. You're not going to pay yourself, more than $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, which is still a lot less, than even what I was getting paid when I was a junior, right out of my business school and working as a consultant. And so you can still see that the time is also an important factor as a segue to the original question, which is time and money, which is the same thing, through a different angle. For the time, I don't know what's the answer. I just spent a year exploring an idea with a friend who's far away in the US. I guess my way of addressing it is I'd rather work with people I know, because then I don't have to spend a year or 2 years to know them. These investments have already been made. And so the people I know who are my friends or I can work with, because there's some friends, of course, you cannot work with, to me, it's a good thing. I'd rather do that. After that, if not, then it takes time. There's no way around time. And so either you kind of jump and you make a hallelujah and you're like, it's going to be great. And if it's not great, then you're going to have co-founders issue, post-fundraising, which is really, really hard. But you can deal with it. All that matters is traction. Just that's another problem to deal with. Or or you slowly explore. But I don't really have any solution for that. I guess there's no way around it. It's exactly the same as getting married, right? Which is, should you get married right away? Should you get married with someone you've known for many years? All these things. And so on the time thing, I think, again, to me, the ideal scenario is someone I know, a cool idea, 15K, and 6 months. And worst case, it doesn't work. Or maybe 5 months, 4 months, but like some commitment that's enough to make it to a point of testing a lot of things. And worst case, we wasted 6 months and 15K, and that's part of it's fine. It happens.
So that brings me to the red flags. How do you know, like, if this relationship works after 6 months, or if you have some sort of traction, there's a little bit of success that gives you this push to keep going for another maybe 6 months, but there's not like 100% all green and nice. How do you spot these potential issues and address them early on?
I mean, before I start with anyone, to me, the main red flag I see a lot in Silicon Valley, in Europe, in the startup world is bullshit. And it's easy to spot. It's people who oversell themselves, like who say, I did these great, amazing things, and it's bullshit. Or use complicated words, or have a fuzzy story that makes no sense. Like, again, if someone is going to be telling you, oh, I know, I did these great things, I know, yes, me too, like someone who has an ego that's clearly in distress, they tend to overcompensate for it. And when you put the piece together, it makes no sense. Like, if you're super rich and super successful and you have all these great ideas and you can build all this amazing technology, why do you struggle, to have 5K at the end of the month?
Exactly.
That's a good red flag. I'd rather have someone who says, I don't have much money, I'm a young student and I'm not sure about what I do. To me, it's a better thing than someone who tell another story and it makes no sense. Or someone who's going to be the same, like someone who's going to say, no worries, I can do that. That's amazing. I'm really, really good. But when you say, okay, cool, like let's do a test for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, still nothing happened, and there's a list of excuses. So to me, again, like the action is a good way to measure if people can do stuff. Whatever it is, it could be building a deck, making an intro, having the beginning of a prototype. If at the end of the day you can build something with that person, that's already good. And after that, again, I wouldn't say that if you failed, it's not because of red flags. It happens. It's startups. It will fail. Mm-hmm. So don't misread neither than when something doesn't work. It was, I should have avoided wasting 6 months of my life. You will waste. It's better to waste 6 months of your life than 6 years, because the worst thing that can happen is you commit to an idea and you launch it, and you don't realize that it's the wrong thing, and then you're stuck with it for 5 or 10 years. That's like the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know. Sorry,
I think. Yeah. So the other thing is, I want to go back to the point of bullshitting. I also want to make it clear, like the advice that we're giving, a lot of the stuff post-exit founders know intuitively.
We don't give advice. We share our point of view.
Not advice. We're sharing. Okay, whatever. We're sharing our point of view. We're not giving advice. Post-exit founders, you're adults, even if you're not, but you are. A lot of this advice, a lot of this stories and things that we're sharing sounds like rudimentary, sounds like, oh yeah, this is what you learn in your first startup. Truth is, we end up making similar mistakes all the time. Like, committing, not knowing somebody and saying, let's go work with you, and spending a year work with them. And, you're stuck in some random place in the world. And you're like, what is going on? And you're like, okay, that was a rule that I broke that I should remind myself not to break again. But I wanted to comment.
I don't think, no, sorry. I want to go there. You don't want to break these rules. You don't want to break these rules the same way that you said that you are naive when you do something technical. I think it's important to simulate. I think it's important to simulate to be naive and to be poor. I think these are the two elements.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But I think you have to constrain them in time.
Yeah. The be poor one, I think what I've seen in a lot of scrappy. It's not poor, scrappy. Like when I did Tectalia, which look, I put on major cons. When I did Tectalia, that was extremely scrappy. I didn't raise any money. I still haven't, with sponsorship, but I don't have any investments or anything. And that's the only one that I've done alone. But I started it with being like, oh, I know how to do events, but I don't know how to do events in Italy. and I don't know what the market's like there, and I don't know how hard it's going to be. So it was a lot of fun learning all of that, but I intentionally said, okay, let me make it scrappy. Let me not spend a ton of money. Let me get the logo done by a friend. And just see what happens. I mean, like the first Tectalia, and you guys remember, I did it right here. Like, it was all virtual, and I think that first Tectalia, we had the most well-known speakers and sponsors and everything. So I think scrappiness is key. And then I want to say one point on the people. I disagree with Frank on doing things with friends. I do things with friends. But I don't always like founding startups with friends. But probably the reality that ends up happening is I found things with people that I know. And the other thing is I spend a lot of friggin' time thinking about a lot of ideas, and then I end up just picking one. And that idea, I would say the first thing that I run to is going to raise money for the idea. So that's why I'm pretty good at fundraising, and I want to focus on that. So like with Gamma, I came up with the idea July. We raised the first check in August, and we closed the round by December. But we had like $1.5 million in our account by the end of September, something like that. And with the SPAC, I had the whole idea in my head for months, but it was August when I committed to it. And by January of 21, so August 2020, had the team fully recruited November, January 21, and we had 9 million in the bank account for that. So my style is I basically just flail. I get very depressed. I get very miserable. I travel the world. I go to Saint-Tropez. I freak out. And then I have an idea. And I was just thinking, like, yeah. So I also have an example, and I'm going to stop talking because I want Teddy to talk. But I have this example that I remember, the really messy middle after Gamma, selling it, not making $1, just getting shares, and thinking it was a really bad sale at the time. And I came up with that idea to do the neobank. You guys remember, right? Like, or I told you, and Frank, you probably remember we don't have a good memory, so you might not remember. But it was a neobank for gamers, and called GGX. And I was working with this guy in London on it, and he was a VC. He was working full time at the firm. And I said, well, I'm coming to London. And I was working on calls with him for like 4 months. And I was like, he'll be great to join. I don't know why I thought he'd be great to join. Not technical, is a VC. But in my mind, he can help raise the money for it with me. Again, stupid because I'm the one who's good at raising money. So I flew to London, and I didn't know the guy, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm here. I'm visiting. Would love to see you. And he's like, oh, I'm so busy this week. I'm so sorry. It's not going to happen. And I'm like, this is 4 months of working with this dude. So sometimes that happens. Yeah. Frank's not
I like what you said about, I like what you said going back to think about the bullshitting, because I'm always stuck in this. My style is very different. I think Frank is going through like the research and confirming that things work, and then building on top, finding people. For you, Gabriel, is finding someone and raising money. For me, it's building things, but I end up building forever. It feels like for many different reasons. And I like what you said there on the bullshitting thing, because you cannot just. My impression before you said that was you build something, and if you just don't build it and go talk to people, you bullshit people. But it's two things: it's building and it's the business side. In my case, it seems like I'm bullshitting the business while trying to build things, and then I end up building it forever. And then on the scrappiness side, I think it always works for me when I'm in that position of being scrappy and not even think about how much money or time or how big this could be. Like, for example, with the early versions of Enzyme, I burnt almost 200K, and it did not work out. We had some traction, but it was terrible. And I ended up building just forever and paying the team also. While for, let's say, the Sucks business, which is not a huge business, but the way I approached that was, let's just spend $500 and see what happens, and then turn out to be a good thing. But yeah, there are for sure lessons. This was helpful for me to kind of introspect myself and see where I'm making this mistakes.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have, but stop me if it's too long.
We do.
Okay. But I want to zoom on to the bullshit. What is bullshit and what's not bullshit? When you do a startup, there's different kind of startup, right? Startup is something young. You're searching for something, could be a restaurant, could be something technical. When we talk about startups, I guess most of the time we talk more about Silicon Valley type of thing, which is like the Formula One of business, which is awfully difficult. It's like unknown everywhere. Very, very few things that you're sure about. Bullshit is not to say, I have no idea I'm going to make money. You have to, it's not that you have to pretend you know how you're going to make money. It's more about you have to believe. And you have to have some kind of vague rationale about it. Some people, AI, that looks great. There's going to be more AI in the future. And some people will say, this is how we're going to make money. And some people like Sam will say, I have no clue. We'll ask, whatever it is, that's fine. To me, that's not bullshitting. To me, the bullshit is more on the execution side, which is depending on which league you play in. It's like the equivalent of me saying, oh, yeah, no problem. I can play in the NFL league. I'll be destroyed in like 2 minutes. But they'd be like, oh, you see what I mean? It's like you have to align your ambition with your talents. And to me, the bullshit is more about the talent. And I think there's the intentional bullshit when people like know they're bullshitting you and they're just trying to use you to whatever attempt. And then there's the delusional bullshit where the person really believes what they say. And there's a lot of them. And maybe, I guess I see that as like the natural result of hustling. But so whatever it is, it's like, there's good bullshit and bad bullshit, I would say, if I have to dumb it down.
Would you give a bullshitter another chance?
Sure. I mean, like bullshit.
Good bullshitter or a bad bullshitter? Which one?
Exactly. If it's a good bullshitter, if someone is a bullshitter but can raise money, but can execute on stuff, and that's great. That's a good skill. But if it's a bullshitter that just destroy your reputation, then you really want to stay away from that. Like a lot of Web3 crypto startup comes in mind.
I mean, it's the only industry that I've been a part of that so many people have gone to jail for in an inordinate amount of time and have done really strange things. I mean,
it's either that or anyone like. And that's true. I mean, sometimes you meet people at this gala and you're like, oh wow, he's Forbes 30 under 30, and I'm like, that sounds like a bullshitter. And then everybody disagrees, and then 5 years later they end up in jail, and you're like, okay, my instinct is good. Yeah, you have to believe your stuff. You have to be careful also about the FOMO, right? Which is you're gonna have it's easy to pick a bullshitter when you're alone, but when some of them are like famous and surrounded by other people, and you're like, oh my god, that person must be legit. It's not hard. You just have to trust yourself. Like you'd be like, you know what? I could have the opportunity to work with that person who has a great network, blah blah. But if you smell bullshit, it's gonna explode one day. It might end up in a Hollywood movie, but it will not sustain. And so that's my style, I guess. I'm just basic stuff, work, good talent, and
I think when it comes to bullshitting, if I think in my end, I'm not going to say something or project something that could not be actually executed on in the future. Like when we were pitching Gamma, I didn't say we're going to make $100 billion with this token or whatever. Yeah. I was like, look, you've got distributed compute. If we can get access to, 1 million of these GPUs, this is what we could make. And it was very clear in the deck. It was like, we can make this. And the other part of revenue,
the hypotheses are rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't like, here's my Rolex, here's my Lambo, let's go do it, which gets a lot of the retail investors, right? So, and then even with the SPAC, I think there's, and this is an interesting personal point that I'll put out. The reason why I think I wasn't as successful with Gamma as I could have been was because I was not as much as a bullshit artist as somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried or, CZ from Binance. No, really. Like I had access to all the same people that these guys had. I had meetings with all of their same investors. And I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't sit in the room and say, look, our token's going to go to the moon and you're going to be worth billions of dollars and you can pump and dump.
Yeah.
But again, like on my end, like I don't think I'm an amazing founder. I would say I'm a very average founder. And I can do, like, to me, I struggle every time I launch a new company. It's difficult to build a team. It's difficult to raise money. It's difficult to build shit.
Oh yeah.
But at least I keep building it. I think also what makes an amazing founder, I guess it's a factor. Number one, it's luck. Where you're born and all of that. Spending a book about it. But I think once you have one super great success, the one who have like millions and millions of dollars and who are willing to reinvest into new ventures, then it gets a lot easier, because you in that case, if you're that type of founders, then don't go for 6 months and 15K, go for $5 million and build the whole thing and call your friends to invest in it and raise, like Elon's a good example, right? Elon is not going to launch the next gen AI with 15K and 6 months of his work. He's going to go and be like, I'm going to raise whatever, like 5 billion and do it.
Yeah.
So I guess our advice apply for if you made like a sub $5 million, $4 million exit, I think it works. If you're into the, another bracket, then I guess you can play that game differently for sure. And we should interview some people who do that.
You can, but for the entrepreneurs that I know that have done that, the majority of the time the outcome is worse. It's worse than their first startup. And I think it's rare we've got somebody like an Elon, and we can name them on our hands. We've got Elon. Yeah, it's Elon.
I just like to show there's always counterexamples.
Jeff Bezos. What is his other successful business other than Amazon?
There's always counterexamples.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Jeff Bezos, like his Blue Origin, they're not extremely successful right now. So I think you're right. I think we're talking in the subsect of entrepreneurs that don't go blow $1 million and it's your last $1 million, or 2 million or 3 million. It's just, and everyone that I know, including Frank, you mentioned Elon, they all raise outside capital. And there's a few, our post-exit founders groups that do everything with their own capital, bootstrapping, whatever. But as you mentioned, we're trying to play in the Formula One, in the in the Silicon Valley style. So.
Yeah, I just want to note that it's easier to raise maybe, but the business itself and the ambition of those founders second, third time, they're much bigger. So then it doesn't mean that running or creating the business, it gets easier second or third time. As Gabriel, you pointed out, typically the second time it's worse, and then probably on the third time things will work out. It's what I've seen.
Maybe in the sixth time.
It's not that, at the end of the day, we're... At the end of the day, that could be or maybe we talked about it, but it's all about perseverance, right? Which is you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And it's very likely that you keep trying 20, 50 times until you die and you'll make zero success. It's possible too. It's very likely, man. Yeah.
But let's just make sure we don't have that as depressing of an outcome.
It's not depressing. I don't think it's depressing. I think it's a good story. I can admire someone who doesn't do
Very good story, yeah. Do we have a quote for today? Anyone?
I have the quote for today, which is, let's see, I'm pulling it up here. Boom, boom, boom. Do we want a cheesy one, or do we want one that's like more impactful?
Let's do the impactful one.
One good idea that comes in out of nowhere can change your entire life, but it ain't gonna do nothing if you don't act on it. And your subconscious is so ninja, it can't stop you without you even realizing what's happening.
Where's this coming from? Where's the...
It's called You're a Badass. Yeah, it's Chinese proverb. It's like very Confucian. It's a You're a Badass calendar. It's my it's one of our sponsors.
Close enough. That was close.
Yeah.
Sure. Is it made in China?
Absolutely, it's made in China, but I think the author is American. But she probably employs the same people. She employs the same people that are at the fortune cookie factory.
There you go.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.